Let's have a decent conversation about something that I've been thinking about for the past few months. Um, I don't. That's not my one only thought. I have a life, so I have other things to think about too. Um, Today I'm gonna talk about how the world ended over 10 years ago. Um, why the world ended. Why the world feels different. Why culture has changed, even though there's not even a damn culture anymore. It's all just TikTok, really. That's just a bunch of bullshit. Let's go ahead and talk about why and how the world ended. Um, First, let's talk about why the world ended and how it did. The world ended when the Higgs boson particle was discovered. If you don't know what the Higgs boson particle is, it has a lot to do with physics and quantum science. It's extremely complicated. But the basics is, as Stephen Hawking predicted way before, I think a little before 2012, he predicted that if we find this God particle, but also known as the Higgs boson, that we could possibly destroy the world so fast, faster than a millisecond. It's really difficult to explain that it would destroy all reality and it could destroy any form of history of mankind. And in 2012, that CERN, if you don't know what CERN is one of the world's best science laboratories and institutes in the world. It's in Europe. It's called CERN. They discovered this particle, and they may or may not have destroyed the world. People are like, "Are you crazy?" A lot of people who say that, they're not really older people, like in their 20s or 30s or 40s, maybe even 50s, because those people believe the world ended. A lot of people saying that they're Gen Z, these Gen Z people, and it pisses me off. It pisses me the hell off when people say you're crazy, and a lot of them are a lot younger people, because you weren't there to see the world before it ended. You weren't there to, you were there, you probably were a lot, obviously, but you never got to saw the world or have these memories of how the world used to be like and its place. The culture, the people, the way of life, the world was so, it's too simple now. It's too simple now. There's not a culture anymore. There's not a year's theme anymore. Um, it's changed significantly and in a very bad way too. What people say, if the world ended, then why are we still here? And it's complicated. You don't understand. It's not gonna end with a big nuclear explosion or a meteor hitting the world. It's not how it works, because inconsiderate people don't understand, and I don't like those kind of people. I don't care if you're sensitive. I don't care. It has a lot to do with physics and quantum science, and it's very complicated. But the basics is that particle was discovered, and it's so powerful that if it's put in a wrong position, if it's put in a wrong angle, or it's put in the wrong temperature or whatever, that it clicks. It clicks and it can destroy everything. But we discovered that particle, and Stephen Hawking was one of the world's smartest people in the world. And he said if we found the God particle, that the universe could be destroyed faster than a millisecond. They could destroy all elements of existence. And it was discovered. So that's proof the world ended. As I was saying. Sorry for the interruption there. It's my bad. Okay. Now we're going to talk about culture. Because culture is a really big one here. It's a really big one here. And, for the people who saw the world or were, old enough to understand, basically, the culture was different back then. Back then, we ain't got no TikTok 30-second bullshit videos of depression, sensitive people. Back then, we didn't have sensitive people. Back then, we had real people who actually had some sense in them. Back then, we had, what do you call that? Back then, we had music. We had real music. We had Drake. We had Lil Wayne. We had, for at least from where I'm from, we had some local rappers back then who were really big. I know South Park Mexican was one, although we don't talk about him too much. We shouldn't talk about him too much because sensitive people get back in here. Now, movies. People say, okay, movies, I might agree with you in movies. People say, okay, at least they agree on that. Movies from back then versus the movies after 2012. I can't explain it. It's like we hit a different dimension. That probably would happen. People believe that. A billion people or billions of people wouldn't believe that if it were a bullshit. It's not. Don't call bullshit on it, because why do all these people believe in it? They're not crazy. They were there to see the world before, it was likely most 99% for sure destroyed. Now, for the Mandela effect, for example. The Mandela effect, people think that certain things were different, but it was really the same. I can't. Chick-fil-A didn't have a C back then. What the hell? But people think that that there are these slight changes which actually make a significant difference. Kind of like the butterfly effect, for example. That has to do with time traveling and stuff. The butterfly effect's a whole nother thing. I'm really big into science. And real science, not some Back to the Future bullcrap. As I was saying about culture, I got distracted on the Mandela effect. Culture significantly changed. Music, like I said, we had Drake, we had Lil Wayne, we had Eminem. I think we even had, pop music. We had, Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga's still a thing, I think. Katy Perry. I didn't really like her too much. No offense. But we had all these different music, like South Park Mexican, like I said, which was in the 90s. But I'm not going to lie, the culture in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the early 2000s, and even the early 2010s weren't really significant difference. And people say, oh, okay, the culture just changed. But no, the culture didn't change, because everything changed in 2013. And I was there to see it. I was 6 or 7 years old, and I remember it every day. I remembered that year. That year was very significant. That year will be significant in history. It should be significant in history, because everything changed in 2013. 2013, we started watching Netflix. We started watching bullshit like Peacock, and we had Hulu. Back then we had Blockbuster. Back then we had DVD. VHS, I don't think I really got to experience VHS, honestly, but it probably is similar to DVD, but although DVD is probably better. We had, what do you call it? We had Redbox, I'll tell you that. We had Redbox back then. We had channels. So instead of watching different stuff on Hulu, for example, we would remember the number of the channel, like AMC. I wanted to watch The Walking Dead. Or I wanted to watch this and that. Definitely, wow, we've come a long way. And for those Gen Z and Gen Alpha, you were born too late. You were born too late to see the world, and that's very sad. You were born too late to see the world, before it was gone. Things like simple changes in 2013 were made, and everything changed. Like Apple, for example. I remember back then we had iOS 6, but the software looks like this now. Back then, the software didn't look all colorful. Back then, we've got the old skeuomorphic design, like it'll pop up here. Back then we had that. We didn't have all this. Back then, we didn't talk a lot about technology. We weren't a bunch of fucking nerds talking about new Tesla. Back then, that wasn't a thing. We had actual sense. We actually made sense as people back then. We actually had culture. We actually spent time outside. There weren't so many damn fat people everywhere. People weren't lazy back then, I'll tell you that. People weren't annoyingly sensitive for no damn reason. TikTok, too. TikTok's just proof the world has ended, dude. I swear to God. TikTok didn't even really blow up until COVID hit. And back then, I remember watching all these movies like Jeepers Creepers, Texas Chainsaw, Smokey and the Bandit 2. Now, we don't even got that. We just got these random-ass slasher movies made by Hulu. It's really all cheap quality, man. TikTok videos, too. They're only 30 seconds long, 1-minute videos. I don't understand them. It's just modern stuff that honestly, in reality, is for the people back then. It doesn't make sense now. TikTok to me doesn't make sense. I find it's just a joke. People just cause drama in there, and it's really just blah blah blah. Instagram did exist back then. Instagram did exist, but like I said, it was very different back then.